Here's a little local news from your resident TYT Houstonian, but as you all know by now, a lot of what goes on in Texas affects the rest of the country, and this is no exception to that. As Trump plans to nationalize elections, he's looking to Texas to get that particular ball rolling.
I don't think it's an accident that Republicans lost a race in Texas by 30 points. It swung 30 points away from them. They lost by 15. It had been 15 points gain. They lost Latinos, et cetera. And a few days later, Donald Trump is talking about nationalizing our elections. Now, I don't know why anyone's listening to Steve Bannon, given his latest forays in the Epstein files, but we should listen to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump should be a concern to everyone, because remember what happened last time. Everyone said, don't worry what he says. And then we had the insurrection on January 6th.
Texans in a deep red district voted in Taylor Rehmet, a 33-year-old union president who beat his Republican/Trumpster opponent by 14 points, despite being significantly outspent. In 2024, Trump won that same district by 17 points, thanks in large part to its large Latino community. That particular community has turned on Trump since the 2024 election, and an election like Rehmet's confirms Trump's worst fears, that whatever support he had in 2024, specifically from groups like Latinos and Gen Z, is waning in a very fast and tangible way. Another recent victory comes from Houston. Ever since former mayor turned Congressman Sylvester Turner passed away unexpectedly during his first congressional term, his seat has sat vacant for nearly a year, since March 2025. After plenty of delays from the state and then a runoff election, that seat has finally been filled by Christian Menefee. Menefee is a 33-year-old attorney who was elected as the Harris County attorney back in 2020. He now represents a historic Houston district, the former district of Sheila Jackson Lee, and personally, as someone who has followed Menefee's political career here for a while in Houston, I am very happy to see him doing well. He's a hard worker, and since his time in public office, he's built a reputation for himself as not being afraid to take on the likes of Greg Abbott or Ken Paxton or even Donald Trump. Of course, I am sad that Houston is losing someone like Menefee, because as you're about to see, Houston, which is the largest city in the state, is constantly under attack from the state and federal government. Most of Houston sits within Harris County, which is the largest county in Texas, and the city and county are reliably blue. There's also a ton of diversity here. And do people outside of Texas know that? I have no idea, but Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the country, rivaling even New York City in that respect. And in the past, Houston and Harris County have seen oversteps into local elections, local school districts, and more from the state level. Republican governor and avid Trump supporter Greg Abbott is currently running for re-election, and he has vowed to flip Harris County in 2026. He said, "I've got $90 million in my bank account, and I'm going to spend most of it in Harris County, Texas, to make sure precinct by precinct we turn out voters who voted in the presidential election, turn out voters who never voted before." Abbott said this in October. He said, "We've got to win Harris County and make Harris County dark red." So to put it simply, Harris County is not going to go from bright blue to deep red without a lot of foul play. And the state has already demonstrated that it is willing to engage in voter suppression tactics to win their elections. Houstonians in particular are more than familiar with these tactics, from limiting early voting locations and times to removing polling locations in areas primarily populated by minorities, to fighting against drive-through voting during COVID, to removing polls on college campuses, and more. Texas voters are always fighting against shenanigans imposed on local elections by the state.
It's certainly critical to my state, and that's why we fought off these 12 lawsuits. We had them in Houston, we had them in San Antonio, we had them in Austin, we had them in the counties where you'd have the most liberal judges. And it was a concerted effort nationally with lots of money going into it. And just knowing that we had 12 lawsuits that we had to win. And if we had lost one of them, like if we lost Harris County, Trump won by 620,000 votes in Texas. Harris County mail-in ballots that they wanted to send out were 2.5 million. Those were all illegal, and we were able to stop every one of them. Had we not done that, we would have been in the very same situation. We would have been on election night. I was watching election night, and I knew when I saw what was happening in these other states that would have been Texas. We would have been in the same boat. We would have been one of those battleground states that they were counting votes in Harris County for 3 days, and Donald Trump would have lost the election.
Even the election of Christian Menifee was impacted by Abbott. There is no reason that that seat should have sat empty in Congress for nearly a year. Abbott simply didn't let a large swath of Democratic voters from his state's largest city elect a new representative until right now. And now it's being reported by the Houston Chronicle that the Department of Justice seeks to clean Texas voter rolls as Trump calls to nationalize elections. But this is nothing new. Texans have dealt with this before. Purging voter rolls isn't necessarily the problem either. That is, to an extent, election protocol, depending on how it's done and how it's handled. But the way Texas chose to do it in the last election was to do it within a window where voters wouldn't necessarily know that they had been purged from the rolls until they tried to vote, at which point, because of other restrictive Texas laws regarding when and where and how Texans can register to vote, it would be too late for them to re-register or otherwise remedy the issue. In essence, the purge was done when and how it was done as yet another method of voter suppression. In the best case scenario, every voter would have had to have been proactive in checking their voter status prior to turning up at the polls, but it is unrealistic to expect every Texas voter to do that or even to be aware that they need to do that in the first place. And now, as Trump keeps talking about nationalizing elections, he's relying on his friends like Governor Abbott to do his dirty work for him. And what happens in Texas is very often exported to other parts of the country. Unfortunately, we all need to watch this space. And to that point, this is all coming on the heels of the FBI seizing voting rolls from Fulton County, Georgia last week, with DNI Tulsi Gabbard lurking in the background for some reason. No one yet knows what is to be done with the information and the personal voter data that the FBI took. Similarly, in December, Texas Secretary of State Jane Nelson struck a deal with the U.S. Department of Justice to hand over the names, addresses, and social security numbers of almost all of the 18.6 million Texans registered to vote. The administration said it needed the data to test, analyze, and assess states' voter rolls for proper list maintenance and compliance with federal law, and sent similar requests to an estimated 43 other states around this country. It's now suing 24 states, including California, Minnesota, and New York, that have refused to comply. Under the agreement, the purge would remove unregistered voters within 45 days, which is simply not enough time for this type of work to be done thoroughly and correctly. Logistically speaking alone, state law mandates that state officials are supposed to reach out to anyone flagged as ineligible to vote. Those flagged are supposed to be allowed 30 days to respond with proof of eligibility. On top of that, it'd be another layer of difficulty being imparted upon voters in the state to provide proof of eligibility within the given time frame. Also, are they sending these notices in the mail? Lots of people don't check their mail on a daily basis, and they must know this. Registering to vote and remain eligible to vote is not supposed to be this difficult in a country that is supposed to be the paragon of democracy. Now, these purges meant to update voter rolls, specifically regarding those who have maybe moved away or are deceased, are typically managed by states. However, as I mentioned, Texas has already tried to use their purges as an attack on its own voters. In 2019, the Texas Secretary of State's office flagged 100,000 registered voters they believed to be non-citizens and ordered counties to contact them and purge them if they did not respond. But many of those voters were later found to be naturalized citizens, and a lawsuit by civil rights groups eventually forced the state to shut down the program. Texas Senator John Cornyn, who is currently running for re-election and is therefore eager to prove how Trumpian he can be, says that while he supports state-controlled elections, he thinks this nationalization is necessary to ensure election integrity, particularly in blue states that don't have strong voter ID laws like what we have here in Texas. And for the record, those laws are not popular here either, because despite assertions that they're meant to protect elections, in practice, they are yet another form of voter suppression, another hoop that eligible voters have to jump through to exercise their constitutional right to vote. And I said it earlier and I'll say it again, unfortunately, we all need to be watching this space here, all right? That's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.